Good evening. Hello, welcome again. It is Monday. It is time for Cycles TV. Welcome to have you here today. We will review some cycles for today. As always, we will do some live review of some charts on the screen. And I'm happy if you want to drop me your notes or comments so that we can have a review at the end of the session. We will take 20 minutes for today. As always, I will keep it short and simple. Today we don't have any special guest, but if you liked the last session with Bill Zarubi, we reviewed the energy markets. And if you have not seen it, please, you can go back and just visit the session. For today, I have two to three things I want to go through today. First of all, let's have a look at some basics. And basics, I mean, what is cycle strength? What is the Bartels score? How can I use different data feeds in the cycle analyzer? I mean, these are the basic questions. They often arise. So let's spend the first 5 minutes, I would say, a minimum, or on these basics if you're a new user, so that you get a basic starting point here. Second, I will then review some or give you some additional information on a data feed which you can use, which might not be as known as you might think about. So this is the second topic, and for sure the third topic, we will review the current status quo of some cycles. So please feel free to drop me your questions or the symbols you would like to analyze today. I will monitor your comments here on the side. So first questions, I just want to look, the days mentioned, which are on the cycle analyzer, most of the times are daily chart first, and second, without weekends. So they are mainly trading days without the weekends, and you can adjust it on the cycle analyzer. I will show you this in a second. And yes, you should be able to download the results. But now let's get it started. So as I mentioned, section 1, let's review some basics now. So for that, I've just prepared kind of cheat sheet here on the right-hand side, so that you're aware of that. So in general, you know that we have a Yahoo wrapper. So the main usage should be go to Yahoo Finance, search for the symbol you would like to do some cycle analysis, and just use the symbol ID you will find on Yahoo Finance and add this the additional comment for the Yahoo data feed. We have additional topics which you can use, which is listed here. So if you like cryptocurrency, for example, use these example symbols here, which are shown like Ethereum, with different cross rates against the euro, against the US dollar, or against other cryptocurrencies. So this is just the first idea here. It's important that you use this data feed ID for whatever symbol you use here on that. Second, I would also recommend to use what the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis offers. So there I would highly recommend to review some charts from them, because they have interesting data feeds like, for example, the volatility index, and they have also some additional stress data, or what they call the stress index there. So that's always interesting to use. And third, there is for sure the Quandl, which is always available. So you can always use the Quandl data and check out for the Quandl data link. Okay, I'm just checking. What about the network? Okay, so let's see. I think the network issues. Okay, drop in your symbols here. So, okay, let's continue. So, but what is not documented, sorry for the delay, I just needed to cross-check the network rate here. What we have not discussed so far is that there is an additional data feed what happens with my... the network bandwidth here. Yeah, that's live. So please excuse for that. Looks like the bitrate is dropping, so I need to check how to check that. So give me a second. So we are back up again. Sorry for the delay. I just needed to reset here some technique. Sorry, I hope you're still with me. So, okay, let's continue. So this is the data feed topic, and I want to cover a new data feed which you might not be aware of. This is that we use Intrinio as a data feed. So you can use Intrinio as a data feed, which is highly recommended here. Intrinio allows to use their data feeds, which is very, very interesting because they offer a lot of securities and additional data sets we can use. So you can go to their website, search for symbols listed at these IDs here. This allows you then to grab some data and directly chart it in the cycle tool. So let me show you how to do this live. So you go to the Intrinio website. I've put the links here also down below. You can then search for a security. For example, let's use Apple. And then it shows the symbol ID, which can be used here in Intrinio. And if you use this ID here, which is the one I see here, and put it into the cycle analyzer, which I will do here in a second. So just go to the scanner, pull up the ID you have found on the Intrinio search site. I mean, in this case, it's the same. And then use the ending, which I show you here. Yeah, and then you can load up data from Intrinio. So this allows you, I mean, it's not split adjusted, but this is the raw data which comes in from the Intrinio, and they offer lots of data set on their homepage, and the foundation is partnering with Intrinio. So we will make sure that if we move into the future, more and more data sets from Intrinio will be available for you in the cycle analyzer. So I've put the link down below in the comments where you can find how to find the securities, and it's a secure fallback, for example, if the Yahoo wrapper is not working. So then we have now partnered with Intrinio, so this will give you additional cycles in the future. Yeah, okay, so this is the data feed topic. Another topic I want to cover is the topic about some basics, which is always requested from you. So what you see here is a kind of basic chart. Yeah, and this is also important to understand. So this is a simple cycle which is shown here. So in general, you have the amplitude. Yeah, this is from top to bottom, the kind of amplitude. The phase shows you where we are in the cycle, and then we have the peak and the trough here. And the cycle length, yeah, is so-called wavelength. What's measured in bars here, and it depends on the time frame you have selected here. So what you also see in the cycle analyzer, if you keep in mind that there are additional statistics plotted on the chart, where the cycle phase is also shown in a kind of wording, this is also explained here on the chart. So you have different phases like bottom departure, uptrend staging, recovery, uptrend neutral, approaching top arrival, top departure, downtrend starting. So this is just kind of wording which makes it more simple. Instead of showing you the phase in mathematical terms, you will also find these wording here. So if you go to the cycle spectrum chart or to the dominant cycle, you will find this wording here. So let's switch to the analyzer for a second. Which is here. Let's just open a simple chart on the S&P 500, activate the cycle, or if you go to the scanner and then scroll over the high here, you will see that the phase is now written as downtrend neutral. Yeah, hope you can see it here where my mouse is and the text which is showing up. And this phase is just the mathematical measurement, but it's now in a kind of understandable written form. And this is exactly what I've shown here on the chart. Here you see the different wordings. So if we've seen approaching or downtrend neutral, this is exactly where we are here on the left-hand side. So downtrend neutral. So something here. And the next phase, which will then come, is approaching bottom arrival. So if you hover over the spectrum chart, you will see exactly these wordings here. And this chart is just a visual interpretation of the cycle here. So that's important. Maybe you can review this chart here. And then last but not least, and then we will quickly move over to the cycle analysis for today, is about the so-called cycle strength, which is a very important measurement and often seen. And let me give you some background on the cycle strength. First, where do you find the cycle strengths? The cycle strength is listed, for example, here in the table, and it's called strength here on top. So this is the cycle strength, and you can sort your cycle analysis, for example, by cycle strengths. Okay, so what is the cycle strength? The cycle strength is a kind of here we are, kind of measurement of the power of the cycle per bar. So, and this is what we're looking for. What does it mean? Let's look at these numbers here. So there is one example, the first cycle, which I've outlined here with the length of 110. So these are the bars or the days, a cycle length of 110 and an amplitude of 300. And the second cycle with a length of 60 and an amplitude of 200. And often you start to look for the cycles with the highest amplitude, which in this case would be the first cycle, 300, or with the highest lengths, because these are more the cycles you look for in absolute numbers, which was also the first cycle here. But if you now divide the amplitude per bars of the cycle length, you get exactly the cycle strength, which is in this case, it drives the amplitude by 2.7 per next bar, which is coming. So that's a kind of indication about the strength or the power of the cycle. For the second cycle, you divide the length of 200 divided by 60 for the length, you get a strength of 3.3. So if you compare the two cycles now by strength, you see that the second cycle will drive the price more than the first cycle. So that's how you look out for so-called dominant cycles or the most important cycle, because the cycle 2 will have more impact on price movements than the first cycle. So it's always important that you cross-check these figures, that you not only go by amplitude or length. So one important is also the strength score, which shows you what drives the price most in regards to these cycles. There are more values, but I don't want to make this kind of teaching course. It's kind of cycle strength. I will use the next Cycles TV session to review some other statistics here. Enough said on the basics, enough said on some techniques here. Let's now dive into our cycle analyzer. Let's go over some basic cycles here. So let's start with the main markets. Or maybe questions on the strength. Let me check. So what about your question is about the strengths on a statistical basis? Let's just open one chart and explain it on an example here. So this is when you open your cycle chart, you have the spectrum here down below, and the table gives you then the cycle strength here, and it's sorted by cycle strengths here. So this is the standard setting that you get the table listed by strength. So the strength is not calculated based now on additional statistics. It's just using the digital signal processing, which outputs the cycle with a length of 174 in this case as a dominant cycle. And it's just used this kind of averaging over the used data here. So what we use the in-sample period from 2017 to 2020. These 3 years is used by digital signal processing, and then the outcome is used to calculate the strength. So there is not additional statistical verification in it. So, and it's different from the Bartels score. Yeah, bars shown on that. If I talk about bars, so this is just one step on the time series here. I mean, 1 bar is here 1 day in this case. Yeah, and this is using weekly data, so all the data which is fed in, excluding weekends. So it's just, if you go over the data, it's not including weekends here. You can adjust the configuration if you like to make it even, so to skip holidays, or if there are missing weekdays, you can, but it's pre-selected by default so that you ensure that missing weekdays will be filled, but not weekends. Yeah? So it's like bars is a day in this case. It's a standard time frame, and it's trading days and not calendar days. Okay, said that, let's have a look at the main charts, and then I will go through your comments and the symbols you're also interested in. This is the S&P 500. I think with Friday's close. Yeah, so, and the active cycle is still with a length of 174, which is active for quite a long time. It has not changed yet. So as I explained in our last session, we are around mid-cycle here, and it's still projecting the low for mid-December. So we need to watch out how the cycle behaves. And as you see from the previous period, we are in a kind of sideways range now. So from detecting and even forecasting the top here, end of August, beginning of September. So it changed the trend from upwards now to sideways. Yeah, and this is also a kind of indication that the cycle is in force right now. So the cycle with a length of 175 changed the uptrend now to a sideways trend, and we are still, which Lars up and downs for sure. But in general, following the cycle here now in the sideways 5, which could result, if we now approach mid-end December, where the projected low is, that we need to keep an eye on short-term movements and possible change in trend around mid-end December, just using this cycle here. We could throw other cycles in the mix, but this one stands out. And there are only shorter cycles which could be used in addition, but I would not recommend to do this because the market is very volatile, and it's not easy to trade short-term cycles in this market here. So let's watch out what happens around mid-December, if the sideways phase will end, or if we will have still a downward acceleration into the mid or late December period here. Okay, this is the S&P. What's always interesting when we review the main market, it's to review the sentiment measures also. In this case, I like to use the VIX index. I think this was also requested last week, but we didn't have time to do that. So this is the VIX index. Let's cross-check the spectrum chart here. It's again 180 stands out as cycle here. So let's activate this cycle here on the chart. And what is interesting here is more or less the same. It's signaling a top in the volatility index around mid-December. And this is vice versa. So top in the volatility index is aligned often with market lows, and a low in the volatility index is then vice versa, often a high in the market. So we have a kind of synchrony of cycles between the volatility index 180 and the main index 174, which are in sync right now and still telling the same story until mid-December. and then the next cycle turn into mid-March next year. Okay, so this is the main index. Let's go through other markets for sure. Let's go through the commodities. We have reviewed the energy markets last week, so let's have a look at the commodities, gold and silver, today. Let's use gold for today's analysis. Gold is still moving down since August. So let's check what cycles would be interesting here. So here we have 3 peaks standing out. The 128, 203, and 325. All 3 have green triangles, which means the Bartels score is okay. And these have the largest triangles. So I mean, I would start with the largest green triangles. These 2 would be good to pick. So let's use the 203, which is this one here, 203 and 128. So this, this is the story of the 2 dominant cycles in gold, which mainly shows that we are approaching the projected bottom of these 2 cycles here right now. So if we zoom in, we see here that we're approaching exactly at the bottom of this composite. We can now check if there would be a difference if we just use one cycle. So the longer term cycle just shows beginning of December. If we activate both, we already arrived at, and the 128 alone, we just passed it. So these 2 cycles show we are around bottoming phase. We could add the larger one here in addition, 325. Yeah, but it does not change the picture here. It's same picture even if we add the larger one cycle here. So gold speaking a clear picture, and let's check if silver looks similar. So this is silver. Here we have one cycle standing out, the 212, which is similar to the 203 on the other one. So 212. Yeah, there's some room to go. So still in the downtrend, but here maybe end of year approaching. So silver and gold are not quite in sync, but length with 200. But we are at a bottoming cycle, or at least are approaching beginning of next year the bottoming. So here we should closely watch how gold and silver behave and use additional measures and indicators to time our trade. Weekly cycle. Let's talk about weekly cycles. This was one question. I just check it. Yeah, weekly cycles are possible. So let's go back to the S&P. And this is also important for sure. So let's go to the S&P back. And if you want to add weekly data, let me explain how to do this. You can do this by using the Yahoo Finance data feed. So let's open the S&P 500 via the Yahoo data feed. And I want to make it even a little bit larger that you can watch it here. So this is the ID for the S&P 500, just grabbing data from Yahoo Finance. Okay. So if you want to have the weekly data, we add a -W, and this should pull up. Okay, so why it's always wants you. What's the? Let's cross check this. Have I done something wrong? What's this symbol for? I took the wrong symbol. It's always the same. So, but this is live. This is how you do it. This is the ID for Yahoo Finance for the S&P 500. Let's go back to our tool. I did it wrong. So this is the daily data pulled now from Yahoo Finance. Daily data, but now you're asking for weekly data, and you use the same ID and add -W. So now let's try it again. Let's scan it. Now it should bring up weekly data, which you see here now has just happened, and it's going back to 1989. So what the hell? Long time history of daily data, weekly data here. Now you have the S&P 500 on a weekly chart. Yeah, so this is now one bar is now 1 week. Yeah, if you go over the data set, and the cycle analysis is now done the same as if you would use daily data. So this cycle, which is now detected here with a length of 184, is a weekly length. Yeah, so it's always related to the data set you use. So this is a weekly cycle of a length of 184 weeks. So if you activate this cycle, 180, this one here. So this is now the weekly cycle on the S&P 500, at least using this data set here. I mean, it's very hard to discuss some cycles here in this longer uptrend here. I would be careful, or you need to use more data here, maybe even going back to somewhere here and update the analysis. So this is now the data we have. So let's check. Yeah, now a longer weekly cycle comes into play. So this one here, where you see it catches a little bit better the cycles which you also see on the price chart. This one was skipped, and this is now signaling we are at a weekly high. So this is then in a huge downturn, and we have the 180, which was also shown here, which signals we have still some room to go. So this is what you need to do if you play a little bit with these cycles. So the cycles with the length of 184 you've seen just before on the weekly analysis. This now moved into the 180 using a little bit another time frame, which is indicating kind of topping market in March next year. And if you remember the S&P analysis we just did some minutes ago on the daily chart, it also showed that we are now kind of before a low in mid of December, and then the next upcycle into March next year on the daily chart, which would be in sync with the weekly cycle here about 180. And if you add the longer term cycle here, yeah, it's January. So I mean, you can't take it by week, but it looks like we can move into February, March next year on the weekly cycle. So, but that's just how you do it, the weekly data. Okay, so another question. Yeah, trend information. I mean, the cycle analysis is done by detrending the data upfront. So it's quite the opposite. So the cycles try to find the cycle not taking trend into account. So you need to think about using the data set without trend. So the simple answer is no, the cycle scanner does not detect trends. The cycle scanner is used to detect the cycles based on detrended data from your raw data set. I mean, what you could do, yeah, or let me know what you think about if you talk about you can do it. I mean, you need to can use longer term cycles, for example, this weekly cycle, which gives you kind of idea what the longer term trend is. So in this case here, you see that the weekly cycle is still pointing up, so that you derive the trend from the longer term cycle is still up, and then you go to the daily time frame and check your daily cycles. So you can use kind of weekly cycles to kind of derive what's the trend on the daily time frame. Yeah. So if we have such huge long cycles for 365 weeks, 4 weeks, or 180 weeks, and then go down to the daily time frame, then you know that the weekly cycles are pointing up into March next year. So this is what we've learned from the long-term cycle. So if you just look at the daily chart, you can say that the trend derived from the longer term cycle of the weekly chart is up until March. So if you now search for cycles For example, the 174. So what's now important here, I would not call it really trend, but it's quite similar. So if you have this upswing here from December into March next year, this means that this upswing is in alignment which the larger weekly cycle, which means either you have a cycles within cycles approach with this upswing here, or you can say that that we are still in an uptrend, and this would also then explain why this sideways move here is. Yeah, you see even the daily cycle stopped the uptrend, so this is right on time. But on a daily time frame, the market did not really drop. It moved sideways with this down cycle. This is because the weekly cycle is still pointing up. So this is, I mean, we are just digging into some simple terms, but I would call it kind of, using the trend, go to a longer time frame, weekly chart. You know that the weekly cycle is still pointing up. This explains why we just see the sideways moves here. And this is then an interesting period to watch, end of December into March, when the longer term weekly cycle and the daily cycle comes back into alignment. Okay, yeah, so profile 1, profile 2, P1, P2, what is it about? It's called profiles. You can configure your settings a little bit here. I will not go into the details today, but if you tweak your settings, you can save it in profile 1 or profile 2 and press set, and then your settings are stored. So once you get back into the cycle analyzer, you don't need to tweak it again. And with profile 1, profile 2, you can then switch quickly through some favorite settings you have done. So this is how you use the profile. Okay, so let's review some ticker symbols you want. I think there was one mentioned here. Okay, I don't know what's this about. GPN. What's GPN? This is Yahoo ticker. Let's cross check. What do you mean by global payments? Okay. So global payments was asked by you. Global payments. Yep. So here it is. Here is global payments. It's one stock here. So this is the chart. It's up to today, the data. So let's go through to the spectrum. Check what might be interesting here. So this one here, 167, maybe 118. So I would start with these two. 167. This one here. Let's make it 167 and 118. 118. Yeah, this is, I mean, these are the most two important cycles for global payment. Check by strength. So this is the third highest, and this is also okay. This Bartels score is okay. This Bartels would be questionable with the score of 60, but you could use. So this one is for sure okay. And if you add the other one, it's kind of looking into a bottom beginning next year, or at least also mid-December. So it's kind of in sync. In sync with the longer or the global market cycles we have seen. It's quite similar period here now, 167. So we had the 170 on the main index, so 167 in global payment. Quite similar outline here. And if you add then the shorter ones, I mean, not really clear how this behaves into kind of sideways or even bottoming area end of this year, beginning of next year, and then the next upward swing into March. Yeah, this global payment. I think the energy markets also asked, so let's review the energy markets again for sure. I think this is what we also did last week. So I would not expect a change in the energy markets compared to last week's analysis. just update the data. And I'm sorry for running out of time for today, but I want to give you this live feedback for the requested analysis. And I also need to excuse for the technical hiccups we had in the beginning. No, I just don't know why it's not updating. So it looks like there it is. This is the energy ETF. Yeah, updated last data. And here also we see the cycle which we had in the global index. And we can make it even just larger on the chart. And this is what we discussed also in our last week's session. So please review also the video we did last week, because we explained why the bottom, which is from this main cycle here expected for the beginning of December, is more or less expected to become in more early. And there are reasons for that. And we showed other cycles which come into play, which might explain why the low is already in place. And this is also projecting then the upward swing into March next year. So this is the cycle for the energy markets. And please review what we did last week. So, gentlemen, we are running out of time. So I'm now getting warmed up and I'm now really in the cycle analysis. I hope you enjoyed a little bit digging and diving into the cycles. I think one missed. I want to give it to you because this was asked also in the beginning. Okay, we had some data hiccups here, so maybe we cannot look it up for today. No, but you are not looking for AstraZeneca. Okay. What's the index you're looking at? You need me to explain me the symbol you want to check, but to be honest, let's keep it as it is for today. This is live. This is just diving into the cycles. I hope you liked a little bit today's session. I hope you got something out of it. Drop me your notes, put your comments in the video so I can see what you're interested in. And please join next week, Monday, to have the next session on some live analysis on cycles. So thanks for taking the time with me today. And I would love to see you for sure next week.